The wedding. The day of Olivia and Benjamin's wedding had arrived, and the atmosphere was brimming with excitement. The church was grand, with delicate chandeliers casting a soft golden light on the guests seated in their elegant outfits. Everything about the wedding was extravagant, from the flower arrangements to the soft strains of the orchestra playing in the background. It was the perfect picture of a fairy tale come to life. Benjamin stood nervously at the altar, trying to keep his composure. His eyes searched the crowd, his heart beating faster with every passing second. He was waiting for the moment when Olivia would walk down the aisle, and his nerves seemed to settle at the thought of her. She was the woman he had chosen, the woman he loved, despite the challenges their love story had faced. Benjamin had come from humble beginnings, born into a family of farmers who lived in a small rural town. His childhood had been spent running through fields, working hard alongside his parents, and learning the value of simple, honest work. But even as a child, he dreamed of something more. He dreamed of a life where love and hope had no boundaries, where nothing could stop him from achieving the happiness he sought. Olivia, on the other hand, had grown up in a different world entirely. Her family owned sprawling estates, with more wealth and privilege than Benjamin had ever known. Her life had been one of comfort, education, and opportunity, things he had always longed for but never had the chance to experience. It was hard for him to imagine that she had chosen him, a man from a poor family, to be her husband. A man who didn't have the kind of status or wealth that her family would approve of. Despite their differences, their connection had been undeniable. Their first meeting had been a chance encounter at a community charity event. Olivia had been volunteering, organizing donations for a local shelter, and Benjamin had been there to speak about the needs of the rural community. They had exchanged a few words, but it was a fleeting moment that left an impression on both of them. Over time, their paths crossed more frequently. As their friendship deepened, so did their love for each other. Olivia saw beyond Benjamin's background. She saw a man with ambition, intelligence, and a kind heart. Benjamin, in turn, was captivated by Olivia's grace and warmth. She was everything he had ever wanted in a partner, intelligent, independent, and driven. But there was also something unspoken about her, a vulnerability, a sensitivity, a quiet strength that drew him to her in ways he couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just love that grew between them, it was a deep, unshakable trust, a partnership that felt like they could take on the world together. Yet, despite their bond, they knew the challenges they would face. Benjamin's heart was heavy as the realization that their love might not be enough to break through the barriers society had set in place. People like him didn't marry people like Olivia. The world had its ways of keeping people in their prescribed roles, no matter how hard they tried to escape it. Benjamin's mother had been the first to voice her concerns when she learned of their relationship. Her voice had trembled with worry as she spoke to him one evening, her weathered hands wringing together in anxiety. "Son, Olivia's family, they're wealthy," she said, her eyes filled with the deep fear she had for him. "They'll never accept you. You're a poor man, and they will look down on you. People like us are never meant to be with people like them." Benjamin had listened quietly, understanding the fears his mother had. She had lived her whole life in a world where class distinctions were rigid, where the wealthy and the poor never mixed. She had always worked hard to provide for him, instilling in him the belief that he could rise above the circumstances of his birth, but the reality of those obstacles still weighed heavily on her. However, Benjamin had never been one to let fear control him. In the face of his mother's concerns, he had gently reassured her. "I love Olivia," he had said, his voice soft but firm. "And I know she loves me. We can make it work. I believe in us." Despite the doubt that lingered in his mind, he held on to that belief. Love had to be enough. It had to be. He trusted Olivia more than anything, more than the doubts that crept into his heart. The wedding ceremony unfolded, and with every step Olivia took toward him, Benjamin's doubts seemed to fade away, only to return in fleeting moments of uncertainty. She was everything he had ever dreamed of, but in this moment, as they stood before their friends and family, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was amiss. As Olivia stepped closer, her radiant smile made his chest tighten with emotion. She was everything he had ever wanted. But the small void at the back of his mind grew larger, especially when he noticed her parents' absence. There had been no mention of them for weeks now, no explanation as to why they weren't attending this momentous occasion. His eyes scanned the crowd of well-dressed guests, looking for any sign of Olivia's parents, but none came. Her family's absence was more than just a matter of inconvenience. It was the first sign that something wasn't right. Olivia had told him that her parents were busy, tied up with work commitments that had forced them to stay away, but Benjamin couldn't help but feel unsettled. He had expected to meet her family long before the wedding, but they had remained distant, seemingly disinterested in his presence. Olivia had tried to brush it off, insisting that they would come around, that everything would be fine once they were married. Still, the nagging feeling didn't go away. Benjamin stood at the altar, trying to focus on the woman he loved, but his thoughts were consumed by the absence of her family. Her cousins and friends had filled the room, but there was a noticeable gap where her parents should have been. Was Olivia's family truly that indifferent to their relationship? Benjamin tried to ignore the unsettling thought, putting all his energy into this moment, into Olivia's smile, into the vows they were about to exchange. Nothing else mattered, not the doubts, not the absence of her parents, because in that moment, he was marrying the woman he loved. He was about to embark on a journey that, despite the uncertainty, felt right. Olivia stood beside him, her gaze soft, her hand in his. The vows they exchanged were full of promises of love, trust, and hope for a future built together. Benjamin's heart swelled with the sincerity of his words. They were making a commitment that nothing, neither wealth nor family nor society, could take away from them. But even as they exchanged rings and sealed their vows with a kiss, Benjamin couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He couldn't help but wonder if, despite their love, the walls between them and the life they dreamed of would remain too high to scale. As they walked back down the aisle, surrounded by applause and congratulations, Benjamin tried to quiet the voice of doubt in his head. He had married Olivia, nothing else mattered. They would face whatever came together, hand in hand. Yet, as they left the church and made their way toward their new life, the unease lingered in his heart. Would they truly be able to overcome the invisible forces that threatened to tear them apart? Would their love be enough to defy the prejudices and judgments of the world? The mansion. Benjamin's first steps into Olivia's home were overwhelming. The mansion before him was more than just a house, it was a symbol of a world he had never known. The long, wrought iron gates slowly swung open as the car rolled past, revealing an immense estate that stretched out before him like something out of a dream. The property, surrounded by lush gardens and dense trees, gave off an air of mystery and elegance, but to Benjamin, it felt like stepping into a realm he was unprepared for. The driveway itself was lined with massive oak trees, their canopies creating a welcoming arch overhead. He marveled at the towering stone columns that led to the mansion's entrance, each one seemingly more opulent than the last. It was the kind of home one would see in a movie, but it was now his reality. The idea of this world being his, even if only for a short time, both fascinated and terrified him. Inside, the mansion was even more magnificent. Every room was filled with works of art and antiques that spoke of generations of wealth. The floors were polished marble, the walls adorned with golden frames containing priceless pieces of art. Soft rugs covered the ground, their vibrant patterns inviting someone to step onto them, yet Benjamin hesitated. He felt like he was trespassing in someone else's life, like an interloper in a story that wasn't his to be a part of. Olivia, however, was in her element. She moved through the halls with grace, her presence filling the space with warmth. She was at ease in this environment, a product of a world that seemed so different from the one Benjamin had grown up in. But despite the luxurious surroundings, Olivia's smile never faltered. She was still the same woman Benjamin had fallen in love with, a woman who cared for him, who believed in their love, despite the obstacles they faced. "Come on, Ben," Olivia said softly, her hand brushing against his arm as she guided him deeper into the mansion. "I know it feels strange, but this is your home now, too. Let me show you around." Benjamin nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. He still couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The absence of Olivia's parents from the wedding, the strange requests that had started coming from her family, everything felt like pieces of a puzzle he couldn't quite fit together. But Olivia was here, and she was beside him, offering him the reassurance he so desperately needed. They walked through the lavishly decorated halls, past rooms that seemed to stretch on forever, each more extravagant than the last. The dining room, with its long mahogany table, could have seated a dozen people, but Benjamin knew it was reserved only for the most important occasions. The walls of the study were lined with bookshelves, but instead of ordinary books, they were filled with thick leather-bound volumes that seemed to hold more secrets than knowledge. It wasn't long before they reached the grand staircase. The steps seemed to beckon him, leading upward to places he had never been before. The landing at the top of the stairs opened into a large sitting area, where heavy curtains hung, blocking the sunlight from spilling in. Benjamin felt a shiver down his spine, but it wasn't the cold that caused it. It was the eerie sense of being watched, of being the stranger in someone else's world. As they made their way up the stairs, Benjamin couldn't help but notice the portraits hanging along the walls. Each one depicted members of Olivia's family, rich, imposing figures who had built this empire from the ground up. Their eyes seemed to follow him, cold and distant, as if assessing him with silent judgment. When they finally reached the top of the stairs, Olivia led Benjamin into one of the rooms at the far end of the hallway. "This will be our room," she said with a smile, pushing open the double doors. Inside, the room was just as grand as everything else in the house. The bed was massive, its white silk sheets a stark contrast to the dark, polished wood furniture that surrounded it. The walls were painted in soft shades of blue, and a crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting a gentle glow across the room. Benjamin stepped inside, feeling small amidst the grandeur. He had never imagined a life like this, never thought that he, a man from a poor farming family, would be lying in a bed like this. The whole room felt surreal, like a world he could never truly belong to. "I know it's overwhelming," Olivia said, noticing his discomfort. She walked over to him, her hand reaching out to gently touch his arm. "But I want you to know that this is our life now. It's not about the house or the wealth, it's about us, together. We'll make this our home, just like we always dreamed." Benjamin tried to smile, but the unease he felt only deepened. How could this be his home? How could he feel at ease in a world that wasn't his? Olivia's family, her wealthy, powerful family, was everywhere, whether he saw them or not. Their presence lingered like a shadow, reminding him of the vast chasm that separated them from him. That evening, as the night fell and the mansion seemed to come alive with activity, Benjamin found himself wandering through the house alone. Olivia had been busy with phone calls, tying up loose ends, and Benjamin, for the first time, was left to his own thoughts. As he walked down the hallway, he came across a study that had been left ajar. He hesitated for a moment, but his curiosity got the better of him. Stepping inside, he found a grand desk cluttered with papers and books. One book, in particular, caught his eye. It was an old, leather-bound journal that had clearly seen better days. Without thinking, Benjamin opened it, and as he flipped through the pages, he discovered detailed accounts of Olivia's family, notes on their health practices, their strange rituals, and their belief in their superiority over others. The more he read, the more disturbed he became. This was no ordinary family. There was something unsettling about their obsession with control, with maintaining their wealth and power at all costs. Benjamin closed the book quickly, feeling the weight of what he had just uncovered. It was as though he had stumbled upon a secret that had been hidden from him, hidden from everyone. The family's obsession with health, their cryptic routines, and their tendency to dominate others were more than just eccentricities. There was a darker undertone to everything. He returned the journal to its place on the desk and stepped back out into the hall, his mind racing. What had he gotten himself into? He loved Olivia, and she loved him, but the life they had built together now seemed like a house of cards, ready to collapse. The feeling of being trapped, of being an outsider in a world that wasn't his, grew stronger with each passing day. But he couldn't leave. Not yet. Not without Olivia. The truth was, despite all the discomfort, despite the unsettling mysteries that surrounded him, he loved her more than anything. He had married her for the life they would build together, the life they had always dreamed of. But now, as Benjamin walked through the halls of the mansion, he couldn't help but wonder, could love really conquer all, or would it crumble under the weight of the secrets that had been kept from him? Would the life they were building together be enough to overcome the shadow that seemed to loom over them both? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the mansion's sprawling grounds, Benjamin knew that he couldn't ignore the truth any longer. There were things about Olivia's family that didn't sit right with him, things that made him question everything he thought he knew about the woman he loved and the life they had just begun. But for now, he would stay. For Olivia. For the love they shared. But deep down, he knew the journey ahead wouldn't be as simple as he had hoped. And as the mansion stood tall behind him, a cold wind swept through the halls, whispering of secrets yet to be uncovered. The secrets unravel. The following days in the mansion were a whirlwind of unsettling emotions and increasing tension. Olivia was everything Benjamin had ever dreamed of, loving, kind, and devoted. But the mansion, the strange rituals, and her family's cryptic behavior were gnawing at him. Each day, the differences between his life and hers became more pronounced, and he couldn't ignore the feeling that something wasn't right. At first, the oddities of Olivia's family seemed like mere quirks, peculiarities that came with wealth and status. They ate at strange hours, always with a specific set of rules that Benjamin was expected to follow. They had dietary habits that seemed to defy logic. It wasn't long before Benjamin started noticing small inconsistencies in their daily routine, things that didn't make sense, things that he couldn't ignore. For example, the family's insistence on his daily health checkups grew increasingly invasive. They requested his blood pressure, heart rate, and temperature, all measured at strange intervals. They insisted on taking his body measurements every week, claiming it was a new, groundbreaking health routine, one that could ensure he remained at his peak. Olivia reassured him that this was just something her family had always done, that it was a way of keeping themselves healthy, but Benjamin began to feel like he was being examined more like an experiment than a man. The strangest moment came one evening after dinner. Olivia had prepared a small feast, a beautiful spread of fresh fruits, vegetables, and meats. Benjamin was grateful for the home-cooked meal, but when the food was brought to the table, there was one glaring omission: there was no real meal. Instead, at each place setting, there was a small, sterile-looking pill placed at the center of the plate. "What is this?" Benjamin asked, his voice laced with confusion. Olivia smiled softly, as though it were the most normal thing in the world. "It's a new nutrient supplement we've been using for the past few years. It contains all the nutrients you need in one easy dose. My family swears by it. It's far more effective than traditional food." Benjamin stared at the pill, then at the rest of the family, who were already popping their pills into their mouths without a second thought. His stomach churned at the thought of swallowing something so strange, so foreign to him. "I've never heard of anything like this," he said, his voice wavering. Olivia gently took his hand and squeezed it. "I understand it's a lot to take in. But trust me, Ben. This will make us healthier. We've done it for years now, and it's worked wonders." But Benjamin's skepticism was growing. His mind raced as he sat at the table, trying to figure out what was going on. This wasn't just about health, it was about control. Olivia's family was using their wealth and influence to dictate their own version of health and well-being. They were trying to reshape reality, one bizarre ritual at a time. Despite his growing unease, Benjamin swallowed the pill. It wasn't so much out of trust, but because he didn't want to cause a scene. He hoped it would be just another oddity to endure and move on from. But as the evening passed and he sat with Olivia by the fireplace later that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeply troubling was happening beneath the surface. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," Benjamin confessed to Olivia, his voice quiet but strained. "I feel like I'm losing myself in this place. There are too many rules, too many secrets, and I'm starting to feel like an outsider." Olivia turned to him, her face soft with concern. "Ben, I know this is all overwhelming, but please understand, my family means no harm. They just have a different way of doing things. They care about us. They want us to be healthy, to be safe. You don't need to worry so much." But Benjamin wasn't convinced. The more he thought about it, the more his suspicions grew. Every day brought a new layer of mystery, a new puzzle piece he couldn't fit together. As time passed, he began to notice a pattern. It wasn't just the pills or the strange health monitoring. There were conversations he overheard, fleeting remarks made by Olivia's family members that hinted at something darker. He couldn't put his finger on it, but there was a constant undercurrent of control, an obsession with order and perfection. The tension in the house started to become palpable. Benjamin's every move felt scrutinized, his actions calculated, his words weighed. Olivia's family rarely spoke to him directly. When they did, it was always with a layer of cold politeness, as if they were tolerating his presence but never truly accepting him. Even Olivia's cousin, Daniel, had begun to act more and more openly hostile toward him. Every encounter with Daniel left Benjamin feeling like a wolf in a den of sheep, always out of place, always unwanted. One afternoon, Benjamin was walking through the garden, trying to clear his mind, when Daniel approached him, his eyes cold and calculating. "You're still here," Daniel said, his tone dripping with disdain. Benjamin stopped in his tracks, sensing the hostility in Daniel's words. "What do you mean by that?" Daniel smirked, his eyes glinting with something that Benjamin couldn't quite decipher. "I don't think you understand what you've walked into," he said, leaning closer. "This family doesn't take kindly to outsiders, especially those who don't fit the mold. You're out of your depth here, and I think you know it." Benjamin's heart raced as the words settled over him like a thick fog. Was Daniel threatening him? Was this just the tip of the iceberg? He was no stranger to conflict, but this was different. This wasn't just a matter of money or status. This was something far darker, something rooted deep within Olivia's family, something he didn't understand. For the first time since their wedding, Benjamin seriously considered leaving. He loved Olivia, but he couldn't ignore the unsettling reality of her family's control over every aspect of their lives. The mansion, the pills, the strange practices, they were all pieces of a puzzle that didn't seem to fit together. But then there was Olivia. He couldn't leave her, not without answers. She was the woman he had promised to stand by, the woman he had pledged his life to. Despite everything, despite his growing suspicions, he knew he couldn't walk away from her. Not yet. That evening, Benjamin decided to confront Olivia. He needed the truth. He couldn't keep living in this strange limbo, pretending everything was fine when it so clearly wasn't. They sat together in the living room, the flickering light from the fire casting long shadows on the walls. Olivia's eyes were filled with warmth, but there was a flicker of something Benjamin couldn't quite place. "Olivia," he began, his voice shaky but determined. "I need you to tell me the truth. What's really going on here? This family, these practices. I don't understand. I feel like I'm being controlled, like I'm just a pawn in some game I don't know the rules of." Olivia's expression faltered for just a moment. A flash of something, guilt, fear, maybe, crossed her face. But just as quickly as it appeared, she masked it with a soft smile. "Ben, please," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I know this is hard for you to understand, but my family has always done things this way. They're just trying to protect us. They care about you, too. They want you to be healthy, to live longer. You don't have to worry." But Benjamin wasn't satisfied with her answer. He pressed on, his frustration mounting. "I don't care about their health practices. I don't care about their rituals. I just want to know the truth, Olivia. What is it they're hiding?" The silence between them grew thick, and for the first time, Benjamin saw something shift in Olivia's eyes, a flicker of doubt, of fear. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but then closed it again, as though weighing the consequences of her words. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping in resignation. "There's more to this family than you know, Ben. Much more. But I can't. I can't tell you everything yet. Not until you're ready." Benjamin's heart raced. This was the moment. The truth was out there, just beyond his reach. But Olivia wasn't ready to share it, not yet. And so, he waited, knowing that the road ahead would be filled with even more revelations, and dangers, than he had ever imagined. The unseen hand. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of the secrets in Olivia's family home seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. Benjamin tried to convince himself that Olivia was right. That her family meant well, that their strange behaviors and rituals were just a product of their lifestyle, their wealth, and their belief in their own ways of living. But every day, it became harder to ignore the feeling that something darker was at play. Olivia did her best to keep the peace, always reassuring him with soft words, gentle smiles, and loving gestures. She insisted that everything was fine, that it was just his imagination running wild, but Benjamin could feel the tension growing between them. There were moments when their connection felt strained, when the love they had shared seemed distant, as though a wall was slowly being built between them, one he couldn't tear down, no matter how hard he tried. One evening, as they sat together on the terrace, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Benjamin couldn't help but ask once more. "Olivia, I can't keep living like this. I need to know the truth. I can't keep pretending everything is okay when it's not. There's something wrong with this place, and I can feel it deep in my bones. Please, tell me what's really going on." She looked at him, her face a mixture of sadness and apprehension. "Ben, I wish I could explain it all to you. I truly do. But if you knew the truth, if you knew what my family is really involved in, you'd leave me. You'd run far away, and I can't lose you. Not like that." Her words struck him like a hammer, the weight of her fear sinking deep into his chest. "You think I'd leave you because of your family?" Benjamin asked softly, his voice trembling. "Olivia, we're in this together. I love you. I'll always love you. But I can't keep pretending that I don't see what's going on here. I feel like I'm in a nightmare, and the more I try to wake up, the deeper I fall into it." Olivia's eyes welled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, trying to mask her vulnerability. She rose from her seat and walked to the edge of the terrace, staring out into the vast gardens below. Benjamin could feel the distance growing between them once more, as if the invisible thread that had once bound them together was slowly unraveling. "Ben, there's something you don't understand," Olivia began, her voice barely above a whisper. "My family, they've been involved in things for centuries. It's not just about money or power. It's about control. They believe in something much bigger than just health and wealth. They believe in eternal life, in transcending the limits of human existence." Benjamin felt his heart skip a beat. "Eternal life? What are you talking about?" Olivia turned to face him, her eyes dark and filled with a kind of sorrow he had never seen before. "My family is part of something ancient, something that has been passed down through generations. It's not just about health supplements or rituals, it's about a secret they've kept hidden for centuries. They've found a way to extend life, to prevent aging, to become something more than human. And that's why they've done everything they can to control us. To keep us perfect. Benjamin was stunned. His mind reeled as he tried to make sense of what she was saying. But how? What kind of secret is this? Olivia shook her head, as if torn between telling him everything and protecting him from the truth. I can't tell you everything, Ben. Not yet. But they've done things to ensure they stay in power. The pills, the health practices, it's all part of a much larger plan. A plan that they're slowly but surely drawing us into. Benjamin stepped forward, his pulse quickening with a mix of confusion, fear, and anger. You're telling me your family is using these pills, these rituals, to make themselves immortal? To control you, to control all of us? What kind of madness is this, Olivia? She looked away, her expression filled with guilt. I didn't choose this, Ben. I didn't choose this life, and I didn't want you to be dragged into it. But my family, they won't let us go. They won't let us escape. Benjamin's mind was racing. This was not the world he had thought he was entering when he married Olivia. This was something far darker, something far more dangerous. The life they had dreamed of building together now seemed impossible, shattered by the truth that lay before him. But even in the midst of his growing fear, something else stirred inside him, something that had always been there but had grown stronger with each passing day. His love for Olivia. He couldn't abandon her, not now, not when she was so clearly trapped in this world of secrets and lies. I don't care about immortality or your family's control, he said fiercely, stepping closer to her. I care about you, Olivia. I care about us. And I will do whatever it takes to get us out of this, to get you out of this. Olivia's eyes widened, and for the first time, Benjamin saw a flicker of hope in them. Ben, you don't know what you're saying. They will never let you leave. They'll never let me leave. Once you know the truth, there's no turning back. Benjamin grabbed her hands, his voice firm but gentle. Then let's face it together. Whatever it is, we can handle it. We'll find a way out. We'll find a way to stop them. She stared at him for a long moment, as though weighing the consequences of his words. Finally, she nodded, her eyes filled with both fear and a kind of determination. Okay, she whispered. But you need to understand one thing, Ben. The family doesn't just want to control us, they want to control everyone. They believe in something bigger than themselves. And if we're going to stop them, we need to know exactly what they're capable of. For the first time since they had arrived at the mansion, Benjamin felt a sense of clarity. The weight of the mystery had been lifted, and though the road ahead was uncertain, he knew one thing for sure, he wouldn't face it alone. Together, they would find a way to uncover the truth, to expose the dark secrets hidden in Olivia's family and put an end to the control they had so carefully constructed. But as the night stretched on, and the mansion loomed silently in the background, Benjamin knew that the hardest part was yet to come. They had only scratched the surface, and the deeper they dug, the more dangerous the truth would become. The sun had set completely, and the world around them had grown eerily quiet. But Benjamin's resolve remained strong. He was ready. No matter what it took, he would fight for Olivia, for their future, and for the truth. The unseen hand of Olivia's family was no longer going to control them. It was time to take back their lives. The walls close in. The days that followed were a blur of careful whispers and covert glances. Benjamin and Olivia had agreed to take action, though neither of them truly understood what that would entail. They had no clear plan, only the raw certainty that they had to uncover more about Olivia's family, about the terrifying secrets they harbored, and about the ancient and dangerous rituals they were so desperately trying to conceal. Benjamin's every instinct screamed to leave, to flee from the mansion, to escape the suffocating atmosphere that pressed in on him from all sides. But his love for Olivia kept him tethered to this strange, surreal world. She was the one person he had trusted fully, and now he had to trust her again, even if it meant confronting the nightmare her family had created. In the mornings, Olivia's family would keep their usual routines. Her parents were always in their study, disappearing behind closed doors, only to emerge for their meticulous and strange health assessments. The cousins and uncles came and went, each as cold and distant as the last, each more interested in maintaining their perfect facade than truly engaging with him. And then there was Daniel, who had started to watch Benjamin more intently, as though waiting for him to make a mistake. That night, Benjamin and Olivia sat quietly in their bedroom, the flickering light of the bedside lamp casting long shadows on the walls. It was late, and the house had fallen into an eerie stillness. The faint rustling of the wind outside was the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. "I think I've figured it out," Benjamin said, his voice low but filled with certainty. "They're not just doing this for health, Olivia. They're experimenting on us. You were raised in this environment, and I was brought in to be tested. Those pills, the rituals, they're a way to keep us in control. It's all part of a bigger plan. But what is it? What are they trying to achieve?" Olivia's face was pale, her lips pressed together in a thin line. She didn't meet his eyes at first, instead staring into the flickering shadows on the wall. Then, after a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "They believe in a higher purpose, Ben," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's not just about immortality. It's about ascension. They believe they can transcend this world, that they can leave behind the limitations of the human body. But it's not just physical immortality they're after. They want to reach a new plane of existence. They think they can unlock the secrets of the universe, bend reality to their will, and achieve godlike power." Benjamin's heart pounded in his chest as her words sank in. He could hardly comprehend what she was saying. Ascension? A new plane of existence? His mind was reeling. How could anyone believe in something so impossible? And yet, the strange practices, the rituals, the obsession with control. It all started to make a twisted kind of sense. They've been trying to perfect this process for centuries, Ben, Olivia continued, her eyes darkening as she spoke. "My family isn't just wealthy, they've been working on something much more dangerous. This isn't just about controlling us, it's about controlling everyone. They want to take humanity to a place where they're the only ones left in charge. And they'll do anything, to ensure that happens." Benjamin's mind raced. The mansion, the pills, the strange health assessments, it was all part of this twisted plan. But why hadn't Olivia ever told him about this before? Why had she kept him in the dark? "I didn't know how to tell you," Olivia confessed, her voice breaking. "I didn't know how to explain everything. When I married you, I thought maybe I could escape it. I thought maybe we could live our lives, away from all this madness. But they won't let us. They won't let me go. And I couldn't stand the thought of losing you, Ben. I didn't want you to see me as one of them." Benjamin reached out to her, taking her trembling hands in his. His heart ached for her, for the woman he had promised to love and protect. "You're not one of them, Olivia. You're you. And I'm not leaving you, no matter what your family is planning. We're going to get through this together. We'll find a way out. But we have to act quickly. We need to learn more. We need to understand exactly what they're doing." The next morning, they put their plan into motion. It was a risky move, one that could expose everything and endanger both of them, but they had no choice. The time for secrets had passed. Benjamin couldn't sit idly by and watch as Olivia's family continued to pull the strings, manipulating them both. They needed answers, and they needed them now. Olivia suggested they start by investigating the study where her parents spent most of their time. It was off limits to everyone except them, and the rooms were heavily guarded. But Benjamin had a hunch. There was something in that room, some document, some object, that could shed light on what was truly happening behind the scenes. As they quietly made their way through the mansion, the tension between them was palpable. Every step seemed to echo in the empty halls, every creak of the floorboard sending them into a silent panic. They reached the study door and paused, exchanging a glance. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. Benjamin pushed the door open slowly, and they both stepped inside, closing it quietly behind them. The room was luxurious, filled with expensive bookshelves, polished wood, and ornate furniture. At first glance, it looked like any other study in a mansion, peaceful, orderly, and perfectly curated. But Benjamin could feel the tension in the air, a heaviness that made his skin crawl. He moved toward the desk, where Olivia's father often sat, his chair always perfectly aligned with the rest of the furniture. His hands moved swiftly, scanning through the papers that lay scattered across the desk. Most of them were routine, family business documents, contracts, and financial statements. But then, something caught his eye, a folder, thick and bound in dark leather, tucked beneath a stack of papers. He pulled it out, his fingers trembling slightly as he opened it. Inside were detailed notes, calculations, and references to something Benjamin could barely comprehend. There were pages upon pages of complex symbols, formulas, and diagrams, none of them making sense. But at the very bottom of the last page, one sentence stood out. It was written in bold, underlined letters. The ascension process is ready. Subject selection to begin. Benjamin's breath caught in his throat. This was it. This was the proof they needed. The ascension process. He had heard Olivia mention it, but seeing it written in cold, clinical terms made everything suddenly real. This wasn't just a fantasy. It was happening. And they were a part of it, whether they liked it or not. Olivia's eyes widened as she read over his shoulder. This is what I feared, she whispered. They've been planning this for years. They've been preparing for this moment. Benjamin stood frozen for a moment, trying to process the gravity of what they had just discovered. He had no idea what the ascension process entailed, but he could feel the darkness of it, the sheer horror of what they were planning to do. And in that moment, he knew that they had to act. They had no choice but to fight back before it was too late. Olivia, he said, his voice low but determined. We can't let them do this. We can't let them control us. We need to stop them before they can carry out this plan. It's time to end this. Olivia nodded, her face a mixture of fear and determination. I know, Ben. I know. But we need to be careful. They're always watching. Always listening. Benjamin looked around the room, his mind racing with possibilities. They couldn't keep the truth to themselves any longer. They had to expose Olivia's family for what they truly were, manipulative, dangerous, and ultimately, evil. But in order to do that, they needed help. Help from someone who understood the depths of this darkness. Someone who could fight back against the power that Olivia's family wielded. And that's when it hit him. They weren't the only ones who had been watching. In the shadows of the mansion, someone else was waiting for their moment. Someone who had been silently observing the strange behavior of Olivia's family. Someone who knew more than they did, and who might just hold the key to bringing it all crashing down. The question now was, who could they trust? The walls were closing in, and the game had just begun. The final revelation. Benjamin and Olivia stood in the quiet study, the weight of their discovery pressing down on them. The dark folder lay open on the desk before them, its contents like an ominous prophecy of the horrors that Olivia's family had been plotting for years. The ascension process was real, and it was ready to begin. Benjamin's pulse quickened as he tried to make sense of what he had just read, but the more he thought about it, the more terrifying it seemed. They had to stop it. But how? As the silence stretched between them, Olivia's voice broke through, faint but determined. We can't do this alone, Ben. We need help. We need someone who understands what's really going on. Benjamin nodded, his mind racing. The enormity of what they were up against was staggering. Olivia's family wasn't just wealthy, they were entrenched in something far darker than he could have ever imagined. But now, with their discovery, they had the weapon they needed to fight back. Or at least, to expose the truth. Who do we trust, Olivia? Benjamin asked, his voice low, filled with unease. Who can we turn to? I don't know who in this house we can rely on. Olivia looked around the room, her eyes scanning the shadows as though the walls themselves might have ears. She took a deep breath, her shoulders tensing. I know someone. There's someone outside this mansion, someone who's been tracking my family for years. A woman named Mara. She's a journalist, an investigative reporter who's been digging into the secrets of the ascension process. I've spoken with her before, briefly, but I didn't know if I could trust her. But now I think she's our only hope. Benjamin's eyes widened. He had no idea that Olivia had been in contact with someone who knew so much. You've been talking to her? Why didn't you tell me? I couldn't, Olivia whispered, her face pale. If Mara had gotten too close, if my family found out, they would have silenced her. They've silenced people before. I couldn't risk putting you in danger. But now, Ben, we don't have a choice. We need her. Benjamin's resolve hardened. Then we'll find her. We'll get her to help us expose everything. They quickly formulated a plan. Olivia would send a discreet message to Mara, arranging a meeting under the cover of darkness. They would meet in a secluded area on the outskirts of the mansion's grounds, somewhere far away from prying eyes and ears. If they could convince Mara to help, they might stand a chance at stopping the ascension process before it could begin. That night, as the mansion settled into its usual eerie silence, Benjamin and Olivia made their way to the appointed meeting spot. Their hearts pounded in their chests as they crossed the darkened lawn, the tall trees casting long, looming shadows in the moonlight. Every step felt like it carried them deeper into enemy territory, but there was no turning back now. They had to trust Mara. And hope that she was ready to help them fight back against the forces that had kept them trapped for so long. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the secluded area, a small clearing at the edge of the woods, shielded from view by thick brush and trees. Olivia glanced nervously around, her eyes darting in every direction, searching for any sign of danger. And then, through the trees, she saw her, a woman, tall and lean, with dark hair that fell in waves around her shoulders. Her eyes were sharp and calculating, the kind of eyes that had seen too much, but never flinched. Mara? Olivia called softly, her voice filled with hope and trepidation. The woman turned, her gaze sharp as she took in the sight of them. Olivia, Ben. I knew you'd come. I've been waiting for you. Benjamin felt a rush of relief. At least for now, they weren't alone. I'm glad you're here, Olivia said, her voice trembling slightly. We need your help. It's about my family, they've been hiding something. Something far worse than we realized. We have proof now, proof that they're planning to initiate the ascension process, and it's not just for immortality. They want to control everything. They've been experimenting for centuries. Mara nodded, her expression grim. I know. I've been tracking your family's movements for years. They've been careful, too careful. But their time is running out. The ascension process, it's a culmination of everything they've been working toward. They think they can manipulate time, control the very fabric of life itself. But it's not just about power, it's about something darker. They want to become something more than human. Something godlike. Benjamin's breath caught in his throat. That's what we were reading about. The notes, those formulas. It's real, isn't it? They've been planning this for years. Mara's eyes hardened. It's real. But what you don't understand is that your family isn't the only one involved. There are others. Powerful people. Government officials, scientists, even military leaders. Your family is a part of a global network, a cabal of elites who've been manipulating science, history, and even society itself, all for this goal. The ascension process isn't just about transcending the human body, it's about creating a new world order. A world where they control everything. Benjamin shook his head, the weight of the revelation nearly crushing him. So, this isn't just about Olivia's family? They've been working with others all this time? Mara's gaze softened, just for a moment. Yes. And it's worse than you think. They've already started the process in secret. They've been using people, testing them, experimenting on them, turning them into the first subjects of the ascension process. Those who survive, they'll be the new leaders. The ones who take control of the world. A chill ran down Benjamin's spine. How many have they already turned into subjects? I don't know the exact number, Mara said, but it's enough. And they're ready to begin with the next phase. If they succeed, if they complete the ascension process, there'll be no stopping them. They'll become untouchable. And the rest of us will be nothing but pawns in their game. Olivia's voice was quiet, but her words carried a weight that made the air feel thick. We have to stop them, Mara. We have to stop the ascension process before it's too late. Mara looked at her for a long moment, her eyes calculating. I've already started gathering evidence. But it's not enough. We need to expose them to the world. We need to show everyone what they've been doing, and why it must end. Benjamin felt the urgency rising in his chest. Then let's do it. Let's take them down. Mara nodded, her expression steely. I have contacts, people who can help us, but it won't be easy. They'll do everything in their power to silence us. But I'm in this now, too. We'll fight this together. The three of them stood in the clearing, their resolve hardening with every word they spoke. They were no longer just a man and a woman caught in a nightmare. They were a force, determined to bring an end to the twisted empire Olivia's family had built, to expose the dark truth they had worked so hard to conceal. As they parted ways that night, Benjamin's heart burned with a fierce determination. The battle was just beginning. They had the evidence, they had the truth, and they had the will to fight back. The ascension process would be stopped. They would make sure of it. But as Benjamin and Olivia walked back to the mansion, the sound of footsteps following them made Benjamin's heart race. They were no longer just battling the forces within Olivia's family. They were up against something far more dangerous, an organization that would stop at nothing to protect their secret. And the walls, it seemed, were closing in once more.